Hello and welcome to another video from Kenson Kerman. For this video I decided I was going to make another retro spaceship, and on this occasion I've decided to try and make a UFO Interceptor, or should I say an interceptor from the TV series called UFO. So we're starting off with the cockpit and trying to make the lowered nose the interceptor has, which is also the mounting point for the single rocket the interceptor carried to shoot down the enemy UFOs. And they didn't have any other weapons, no guns, no other missiles or anything, so if they missed, well, that was it really. They did tend to launch 3 at a time, so they had a fairly good chance of getting one, but if more than 3 came, they were in trouble. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with regards to the landing legs on these interceptors, because they use a ski, and I haven't got any skis, so I'll just use this I-beam to represent where it goes for now, while I work out how to make the front bit stick out a bit. Now this rear section is a bit of a funny shape, so I'm going to try several different methods of getting the effect I'm looking for. You might have to bear with me. I'm sure they'll become more obvious as time goes on. Now I need to reduce the size down to where the engine is mounted. It needs one big engine in the middle, and it has thrusters either side, front and rear facing thrusters. Strangely enough, it doesn't have any vertical lift engine, so I'm a little bit confused as to how it takes off in the TV series. They are based on the moon, so they only have to defeat the moon's gravity, but even so I'm sure it should have some sort of vertical lift engine for taking off and landing. Here I'm trying to find an engine that looks something like the original. Tried all sorts of things with these smaller engines until I tried this one, where I could turn it and hide it, move it and hide it inside the main thruster body, to make it look something like the one in the TV series. Now these are the landing leg carriers. They have another ski on each side. It's a tripod, so you've got 3 skis, so I've just copied the this I-beam section again. Now for the tail fin. It took me a lot of time messing about trying to do this, so I've just jumped ahead to when I finished it. There we go. And I decided to go with landing wheels rather than well, I-beams for landing gear. Although it's not strictly correct, it's as near as I can get for now. And now for the rocket section, using a couple of adapters and trying various size fuel tanks, rescaling them until I get the effect I'm looking for. And then we just have a few tweaks where I pull things around a little bit and reposition them slightly, just to try and make it look a bit better. The rocket itself didn't look quite right, so I made it a little bit bigger and a bit longer. getting a bit more to scale to the original, and trying different shaped nose cones, trying to again get it looking like the original. And I realised I could use the same fuel tank that I used in the to make the rocket section. I could replace this first bit and they would at least match in colour, although it might not be the white of the original, but that's fairly close, I think. That's one of the pictures I was working to. Yeah, not too bad. The tail isn't quite, the tail fin could do with being a bit bigger, I think. So, time for a systems check. I think it drives around a bit. It's a bit strange because the wheels aren't powered. Okay, the centre of gravity is a bit far back on the wheels, so it's going to keep wheeling. Eventually I'll notice that I've actually got the undercarriage mounted backwards. Still not to worry, we'll sort that out sooner or later. And checking the action groups, see if they fire the right engines when I want them to. And just turning the, I think I'm locking the steering off on the rear wheels. I want 3-wheel steering there. So just lining it up on the runway using the small rear thrusters and getting ready for the first test. I would say flight, but I'm not really expecting it to fly. It hasn't really got wings and it's supposed to work on the moon anyway, so it's really just to see what happens for the hell of it, really. It doesn't want to stay straight, it wheelies over the bump in the middle of the runway. And is it going fast enough to get any air? Yeah, no. Well, the flight part didn't work, so I thought I'd try firing the rocket. So while I was messing around with the staging, trying to work out which engines were going to fire on what and when, I didn't notice it rolling. Then I hit the stage button that eventually lit the engine on the rocket, but I didn't fire the decoupler, and then it fell off the back of the launch pad. Oops. Let's sort out the staging sequence, not that I really use it because the engines are on the action buttons, which I've just checked. Back to the launch pad and let's see what happens. Well, it fired. We just need to wait for the smoke to clear so I can see. And yep, it's definitely fired it. Fortunately I did a quick save, so here we are back on the launch pad. Oops, wrong button. Don't want to retract the undercarriage at the moment. Yeah, so we put the lights on. We've got the cockpit light. That's glowing away nicely. And this would be the point where I realised I'd got the undercarriage mounted backwards. As I don't know if you can see, the lights are pointing backwards on it. So yeah, definitely on backwards. I'll sort that out later. It won't affect the rocket test, so we'll carry on. And whoa, yeah, well, it shot off somewhere. Oh, looks like it bounced off the ground and flew over the assembly building. And oh yeah, it's gone past the end of the runway. And back in the assembly building, I decided that I didn't really like the way the body behind the cockpit looked, so I decided to have another go at making that sort of ovalish sort of shape behind the cockpit. So again, I spent rather a long period of time with these funny little fuel tanks, trying to move the attachment points, and somehow I twisted it and the craft wasn't level and things weren't lining up. But after a lot of perseverance, I finally got what I was looking for, and I attached the old rear section that I removed because it had the rear winglet thing on it. I wanted to use that again rather than try making it again, but I might as well have just made it again, because by the time I faffed about and moved the bits of it that I had into position, it would have been just as quick doing it properly. And as you can see, I replaced the horizontal planes, and yeah, so virtually none of that is what I took off of the old one. And I thought I would increase the power of the rocket when it launches by adding several Separatrons, completely forgetting of course that it's going to be on the Mun where there's not much gravity, so much less of an issue. And finally getting around to putting the landing gear the right way round. So we find ourselves back at the launch pad, and we're going to test the rocket to see if it'll launch. Well, that looks like it just hits the ground faster. Let's have another look at that. And again in slow motion. I think that'll actually work fine in space. But what's this thing that lands over here? See some arrows pop up just there, and something lands. Bit of debris flying off in the wrong direction somehow. Well, that seems to have everything it's supposed to have on it. Oh well. So, to try and give it some lift and not crash into the ground, I thought I'd try sticking one more Separatron on the front of it, which ultimately turned out to be a stupid idea. And yeah, just moving the landing gear forward a bit. And preempting a test flight, I thought I'd better give it some manoeuvring thrusters to give me some control over it. So for the first test firing of the extra booster on the rocket, and that's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. I thought I'd give it a go. Well, I was looking to disable the mini booster engine and just fire it on the Separatrons, but all I could find was a manual firing, so I fired it and I survived. So now we can just fire it using the Separatron engines. But there's a lot less smoke, so you can see what it's doing, but it still pretty much did the same thing. So I think the actual booster rocket isn't necessary. Alright, that's enough messing about with the rocket, and that's the end of this video. So check back soon to see how we get on when we try to fly the Interceptor.